Video on celery soup. So I've got some trimmings of celery, so I'm going to turn it into soup, and if I'm making some soup or doing something, I might as well film it because all the times that I haven't filmed something interesting's come out of it. So there's about 700 grams worth of celery. Normally you would peel celery. This is just really kind of quite not worth peeling. I don't know if you can kind of quite see. So there's strings in it, but I've just cut it small. So we might sieve out the strings, but to peel that, we're going to lose half the celery. And it was kind of quite thin. Anyway, so I'm reluctant to kind of peel it. So there's 700 grams worth of celery, and I've got some courgette trimmings as well. So they're going to go in. So it's kind of going to be a celery soup, but with addition of us not wasting anything. So there's about 140 grams worth of the centre of a courgette, so that can just get, it's mostly water anyway, but so celery, so it'll be fine. So it's not going to make a much difference. And then we've got about 300 grams worth of onions. It's going to cook for a long time. I'm just going to cook it until it's really tender, so I'm not that bothered about frying things off or making things really small. I've got a job to do outside, so I can simply put some boiling water on this and let it sit with the lid on for an hour and just let it slowly cook. So I'm not that bothered. It doesn't need to be done fast. And also when we're rapidly boiling things, we end up losing a lot of liquid through evaporation. So there's that, and then we'll certainly put in 2 stock cubes. It might need more. We'll see how we go, and then we'll kind of see what kind of ratio of soup we get, and we'll put in some milk in as well, and we'll pure it down. We might sieve it if it's a little bit woody. So, and then I've got 500 millilitres. I'm going to burn this off because I put it in a glass. We've got 500 millilitres of water, which is boiling, which is just boiled in the kettle, which should speed up the process. So that probably doesn't look like a lot of water, but what will happen is everything will start to drop down. So as long as we put it on a low heat, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so we'll add some milk in. We'll probably need another stock cube, but lid on, and then I'll go and do a job outside in a bit, and then we'll see what it's like after it's cooked. But it's mostly all liquid, so there's going to be quite a lot of liquid that comes out of it. So there is a more solid vegetable. What we're going to try and say here. So yes, so vegetables that have got like a higher water content in them, so that are softer. You're not going to get as high a yield, so you don't need to put as much water in because a lot more liquid's going to come out of the vegetables that you're using. So that's just something you can, as opposed. So if you think of, if you were to make a courgette soup, courgettes are a softer, higher water, well, probably not a higher water content, but there's less fibrous material in them, so you would get a higher yield from a kilo of carrots turned into a soup than you would a kilo of courgettes. I think we need to test that. That's another video we need to make, but I'm pretty sure that you get a high yield from a kilo of carrots than you would get from a kilo of courgettes, and yield as in thickness as well of the soup. But anyway, I'm waffling when I should be outside doing a job. So soup's tender, vegetables are tender, and as you can see, lots of liquids there. So that was about the right amount of liquid to put in to cook that. So it's certainly going to need 200 millilitres worth of water, and I probably reckon it's going to need another. It's going to need another stock cube in that. And then we've got some more water as well. So we'll give it a puree, and we'll see where we are, if I can get the stock cube out. So it's certainly going to need another stock cube. So that's 3 stock cubes. I might need another 100 millilitres of water. Let's give it a puree. It'll stretch. It won't stretch, and the cooker's dirty, so you'll just have to excuse the cooker looking a bit dirty. Filthy, eh? Oh, that's not that bad. You can't really see much. That goes to show, doesn't it? So we'll give it a puree. We'll see what happens. these stick blenders only get things so smooth with the amount of liquid that you kind of put in. So let's put in some more liquid. So it's that hand blender is not going to get it that much smoother than that without the addition of some more liquid in. So let's put in another 200 millilitres of liquid, maybe 100 millilitres. Let's put in 100 millilitres of liquid. We can always add a bit more, very difficult to take it away. Probably need a bit more milk in there as well. We'll see. Yeah, it's going to need some more liquid. So let's put in some pepper, start off with, if we're mixing it around. And we're going to put some more milk in, so we're going to put in another 100 millilitres of milk. Why not? So that's 300 millilitres of milk. And just make it just that little bit richer. You can put cream in, but milk's just, we just need to, if you're going to put cream in, you put less cream in. If you can put milk in, you just put more milk in to kind of compensate for the creaminess. Now, because we've not removed the fibrous parts of the celery, the strings, it will give the impression it's thicker than it actually is. Here's another stock cube in. 4 stock cubes, that's quite a bit. There's probably more in there than I actually think. And celery doesn't taste that much of anything. So, I've said this before. Obviously you can make it with vegetable stock cubes, but I find vegetable stock cubes make soups taste of the vegetable stock cubes rather than actually what you're making. So like a celery soup, for example. Well, no, so the example is I made some mushroom soup and I couldn't find any chicken stock cubes, so I had to use vegetable stock cubes, and the mushroom soup ended up tasting more of the vegetable stock cubes than it did of the mushrooms. So chicken stock cubes are just more neutral than vegetable stock cubes. So unless you really want to make something vegetarian, then I'd always recommend using chicken stock cubes or fresh chicken stock. There we go, I think that's about right. So I could sieve it if I want to, but I can't be bothered. No, let's not put any more salt in, because I think there's enough stock cubes in there already. So let's get a measuring jug, and then we can see what the yield is, and then we know what everything weighed, and we know how much liquid to put in. There'll obviously be a little bit of, oh yeah, so as always, we don't bang plastic on metal because it'll crack it, we just bang it on our hand just to get the excess liquid off that blender. And then let's have a see what kind of yield we've got. Yeah, so we've lost a little bit of liquid through evaporation through the cooking process, but we've got a good yield from that. If you wanted to make it a little bit more luxurious, you just put it through a sieve. It's a bit of work, and you just gotta kind of weigh it up if it's worth it. So out of that we've got just short of 2 litres worth of soup, so that's quite a good yield, is that? But I'll show you. So we'll get a sieve out. You've got to weigh it up. Is the juice worth the squeeze? You know, is it kind of worth putting the soup through a sieve? You get a nicer soup, in all honesty, if we're going to put it through a sieve to sieve out the excess bits of celery strings. But is it worth it? Is it worth it? If you can be really bothered, it's worth it. But you'll see what kind of work is involved with doing it, and then you can kind of work it out. So some of it's going through kind of quite easy, but then you need to get a spoon in there and push it through, which is not everyone's kind of cup of tea. The more you sieve it, the more we'll kind of push through. So we're left with all this fibrous stuff, and we keep going and going and going. So we'll lose a little bit of volume, but you can kind of see if you can be bothered to put it through a sieve. You get a nicer soup. You always get a nicer soup if you sieve it. Like I once had an argument with my dad. I had lots of arguments with my dad, mostly about food and films. Now that's another story. I don't know where I was going with this. I don't know where I was going with that. Don't know where I was going with arguing, but so it's worth. I'll have to look back. I've completely lost thought there. But as you can see, so this fibrous stuff here, it makes your soup nicer because you're not eating those kind of little bits. But can you really be bothered to put your soup through a sieve? That's kind of the question, and you're left with debris on the bottom of you. Oh yeah, that was it. So you used to get my dad was a fan of watching like the shopping channels, and you'd get on these things like the NutriBullet, which was the new revolutionary way of pureeing soups, and they'd put in a whole celery, and this NutriBullet would just obliterate the celery, and so it was smooth and what we call it, and perfectly smooth with you, and you wouldn't taste the bits of the celery stalk in it. And I was like, what a load of rubbish! Like I've made enough celery soups to know, and had enough industrial hand blenders and blenders that you never get rid of there's nothing that would smash up the stalks, the strings of the celery. It just won't happen. So like that's no liquid. I mean, maybe an industrial one, but you're still going to be left with some bits of what we call it, of the string. So yeah, so things are dirty. I've been outside digging. So you get a smoother soup, and because it's smoother, it tastes different. So it's nicer. It's nicer because it's pureed. So I always like a smooth soup because they taste nicer, whereas thicker soups taste like rustic. But so if you were to kind of like have carrots that were just mashed into a soup, then it would taste different if the carrots were pureed. But anyway, so is it worth it? Depends how much people are paying. If, in all honesty, if people want a cheap meal, then you're going to put less work in. Well, it's nice, you put it through an even sieve, but you see kind of how much work is involved, and is it kind of worth it. But anyway, so I'll put the recipe in the description. It's very nice. I'm going to enjoy that, and I reckon there'll be at least 3 portions in there for me. But 2 litres, what? About 5. 2 litres. Yeah, I reckon about 5 or 6 portions. Yeah, 6 portions. 5 generous portions, 6, okay portions. Oh, depending on who you're feeding. But anyway, so celery soup, relatively straightforward, delicious, and especially if you've got leftovers of celery like I had.